questions?
Yeah. Questions? Give the Government Office a tough time. Yeah.
Hi there. You were talking about the cost efficiencies and how we can kind of look at savings within our own organisations. And I think that the third sector has been good at that for many, many years.
Yes.
And where I think that we've been different and distinctive from some of the statutory sector is that we've always been really tight, quite thin, and targeted our resources to the front end where the kind of service delivery is. And now, arguably, if the government is asking us to make cost efficiencies, we've hypothetically got less capability to absorb those cost efficiencies than perhaps some of the larger organisations that have got more infrastructure to do that. So I'm not saying that we need an answer to that, but I just think that we need to be aware and acknowledge that it might be harder for the third sector to do that than it might be for other areas of the economy.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. I completely agree with that. You know, as I chair a couple of things in the public sector, and we've always been incredibly cost conscious. I think this is a moment for innovation. So rather than just do another 5%, it seems to me if you can partner up, if you can share management. So something I'm involved in has actually taken on the management of, I chair a thing called New Writing North, and our director's now also running part-time Dyslexia, which is another magazine. So, you know, it's a sort of moment for perhaps alignment, collaboration. And I was struck by that Northern Rock Foundation work, which, you know, said that the sector is actually quite tuned into that and perhaps has a more open door than the statutory sector, who regard any collaboration as giving up sovereignty and stuff, which you just think, look, hang on, it's about services for individuals. So I think if you can almost promote the fact you've been doing this and be visibly aligning, collaborating, you know, I think you'd be on a really good wicket.
Okay, another question, please. It's a karaoke moment, because Neil actually has a roaming mic here.
And I'm not going to sing for it.
Yeah. Okay, sufficiently motivated, that's the question.
Hi, just wondering, with a lot of fragmentation currently, especially in the world of mental health and employability, we're losing organisations like mental health development units and job centre clusters and job mental health coordinators. How can we cohesively bring that all together now when things are being so fragmented?
Yes, I've got a great statistic. Job Centre Plus are moving to a combined region with Yorkshire and Humber, and they're going to go from 180 to 10 staff. So, you know, when I talk about better for less, it's quite a challenge when you move into that sort of landscape. Well, I suppose my message would be, perhaps we've become a bit too dependent on that sort of quite elaborate structure. A few years ago, we got the OECD in, and they thought we probably overdid, you know, public sector structures, to the point that it actually wasn't clear who was responsible. And there was quite a lot of duplication and scope for alignment, you know, coming back to the previous question. I think if it matters, people will need to collaborate on almost a voluntary basis. So hopefully these regional, local, sub-regional arrangements have sort of reduced the old barriers we used to have, which was, you know, Newcastle did everything on its own and Gateshead operated independently. So I think there's much more of a willingness to cross the old administrative boundaries. But the fact is, we're going to have nothing like that kind of collaborative infrastructure. Thinking of, you know, institutions like the SHA that did a great job of pulling people together. That's just not going to exist. So we're going to have to rely a lot more on kind of voluntary collaboration, particularly in those areas where people see the, you know, the value of it, rather than just getting together for, you know, the sake of it. So that's a bit of a hard answer, I know, but it's just kind of, I think, being in tune with the new realities.
Another question? Just after that,
Just to respond to that, I think within the welfare reforms, that's coming in, universal credits, housing benefit, and all those measures. It's really a critical time for people who use services, not just mental health services, but housing benefit, council tax, to have that support that needs to be cohesive. And I even think, even if you look at regionally, the Association of Directors of Adult Services, they don't sufficiently have the finger on the pulse. They have the breadth, but I don't think they have the depth.
Yeah. Well, I don't hang back. You know, I think the old days of expecting the public sector to guide, direct, it's just not going to be realistic. I mean, one of the big issues, I'm helping a bit with the dismantling of the RDA, and there's a sense in which the RDA did an awful lot for this place. You know, project development, project appraisal, project monitoring, quite a lot of delivery. We perhaps kind of created quite a, elaborate structure to deliver a lot of stuff that could have perhaps been delivered in a slightly different way. I better be careful what I say here. Don't quote me on that. I do think it's a one-to-one, isn't it? But I just think we're moving into a different place in terms of what's sort of nearby. And if it matters, we'll collaborate. If it doesn't, well.
So it could be the public sector starts to look a bit more like the third sector.
I think with public sector it's basically you turn the hot water tap off and you turn the cold one on. Where to be honest, you need to mix a bit of the two.
Yeah.
It's that mixed economy where basically one's being cut off and then there's a delay and then the tap's being cut on.
But I keep coming back to it's all about the care, the client, the carer, the family. Let's always keep their, perspective in mind. They're the people that matter, and it's about designing things so that we give them the best possible service, the greatest possible choice, and we involve them in the decision about what's the right thing for them.
Another question?
Can't hear you.
It's special. I have struggled with these things. Good job I didn't use PowerPoint.
It's such a huge impact on family, community, and the value of all of that.
Yeah.
Nobody in this audience, I'm sure nobody to any audience that we talk to would disagree with that. But we also hear that George Osborne doesn't have a plan B, the government doesn't have a plan B. So what we've got is what it's going to be. And when it all goes horribly wrong, which, I wouldn't hesitate to say that I'm concerned that there's going to be some serious problems. We are going to have destination families, we are going to have destination communities, and that is going to lead to more mental health problems and social unrest. How do we deal with that? How do we keep focusing on the core values of society if they're going to be broken down?
Yes, it is an interesting scenario.
Where are barricades, John?
Well, I was going to say that in the public sector now we talk about risk assessment all the time. So it's sort of preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I think there is a sense of we do need to have some contingency plans when not all the GPs, press the button and have this seamless commissioning service in a couple of years' time. And I suppose what I'm really saying is that we need to be incredibly positive about having an orderly transition to this new landscape of the way in which services are going to be delivered. And that's quite hard at the moment because I think people are full of kind of anger, despair, confusion. The paralysis point that has been picked up. Everything seems to be changing all around us. When's it going to stop? When are we going to have a period of stability? But of course, as people say, there isn't a moment when Plan C comes along and public finances are restored to Northern Rock doubles its employment and so on. We're going to be faced with quite a rocky road over the next few years as the economy tries to rebuild itself from really the devastation of the collapse in financial services, because without going on about it, it was the City of London that basically fueled the public expenditure boom of the early 2000s that fueled the NHS, the education investment. And when the credit crunch came, and I know we all hate the bankers and stuff, but they really did finance a lot of this stuff. So we've had a double whammy in this country because we were so dependent on those services. So I guess, you know, the government's doing some tough things. People argue they could have faced it over a longer period, but, you know, we all voted, and that's what we've got. So I think we've just got to get on with it. I do think the resilience point is important, though. We're now, I think, a much more resilient place and much more capable at riding and coping and, you know, seeing and getting the best out of what is difficult circumstances.
Okay. Is there one more question?
Case we'll move on. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'm not decided I feel like Friday afternoon or Monday morning at this point.